Good afternoon and welcome to the December 1, 2023 meeting of the Rotary Club of Beavercreek. Thanks to David Brandenburg and Brandon Huff for greeting, Erica Marquez for handling with our exchange student who's here somewhere, the Ticketmaster duty. And thanks to Beth and Eric for getting the setup done. Thanks to Pete Bales, Mark Weinstein, Mike Swick for the great programs, and for Jim Gundel handling the website. All right, I would turn to Jonathan Hebrank for an invocation.
All right. Father, thank you for first day of December, and thank you for this past week and ability to spend time with family and friends and kind of give thanks. And as we head into another season, we do just ask and pray that you just be with us throughout the seasons that sometimes they can be more difficult than others. And we just ask to bless food to our bodies and pray. Amen.
Thank you, sir. All right, Joe Jenkins, Secretary reports.
We're at 52% and no guests today.
All right. Okay. Sergeant at Arms, President-elect, Mayor-elect, some other kind of elect, I'm sure. Don Adams.
They always do. It is December 1st. It's the 335th day of the year. There's only 30 days left in 2023. So if you plan on getting something done this year, you're gonna move on. Today we celebrate Bartender Appreciation Day. Something is near and dear to me, Civil Air Patrol birthday. I was still remember some 40 years. Day Without Art Day. Eat a Red Apple Day. International Sweater Festival Days. National Christmas Light Day. National Pie Day. Wear a Dress Day. Everybody do that? And National Peppermint Pork Day. Today in history, the U.S. representatives in 1884 began to decide the outcome of the election deadlock between John Quincy Adams and Andrew Jackson. They didn't really elect John Quincy Adams until February 9th of the following year. We've got a long time to do it, so let's get it done with elections. In 1887, Sherlock Holmes was first appeared in print in The Study of Scarlet by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. In 1896, the first certified public accountant received his certificate in New York City. In 1903, The Great Train Robbery, the first Western film released starring Justice D. Barnes and G.M. Anderson. I think I saw that years ago. In 1913, the first drive-up gasoline station opened in Pittsburgh. Not sure what they did before that because none of the cars were out there. Guess they carried them on the factory car. Also 1913, or excuse me, 1917, Boys Town was founded by Father Edward Flanagan west of Omaha, Nebraska. In 1929, the game of bingo was invented by an American toy salesman. As I said earlier, in 1941, the U.S. Civil Air Patrol was organized. Every official exhorted the Air Force. In 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to move to the back of the bus and give her seat to a white passenger in Montgomery, Alabama. And in 2019, on this date, is the earliest traceable patient that developed symptoms for COVID-19. Well, that's over. In our club over the last couple of weeks, since I've not been up here, I wasn't able to give a report, but we have a few things that we need to note. Ed Phillips on 21 November had a birthday. Seen here today. Bill Sparks on 25 November had a birthday. And Mark Weinstein on 24 November. Jonathan Hebring's wife Heather had a birthday. 19th of November. And we had some member anniversaries. Dave Happy, 30 years. Joseph Jenkins, 2 years. Melissa Quinn, 0 years. And Carrie Souter, 30 years. And then we also had a wedding anniversary. Mike Cannon and his wife Megan had 18 years. Wanted to come up, there's, I've done this before, I wanted to come to weird laws that are around the United States. In Oklahoma, you can be arrested for making an ugly face at a dog. In Pennsylvania, it's against the law to tie a dollar bill on a string on the ground and pull it away when somebody tries to pick it up. In Massachusetts, it's illegal to go to bed without first having a bath. However, another law prohibits bathing on Sundays. In Samoa, it's a crime to forget your own wife's birthday. And in Australia, it's illegal to name any animal you plan to eat. In Iowa, after 5 minutes of kissing, you've broken the law. In Washington, pretending to have wealthy parents is illegal. In St. Louis, Missouri, if a woman is in her night clothes, it's illegal for a fireman to rescue her. In Minnesota, it's against the law to hang male and female underwear together on the same clothesline. And this one always gives me a pickle is not a pickle unless it bounces in Connecticut. Someone sent me these things. If you've ever heard of Stephen Wright, he's a very deadpan comedian that was out there for a long time. These are some of the things that he has brought up, and I thought I'd just share some of them with you. He said, I'd kill for a Nobel Peace Prize. Borrow money from pessimists. They don't expect it back. Half the people you know are below average. 99% of lawyers give the rest of them a bad name. 82.7% of statistics are made up on the spot. A clear conscience is usually the sign of a bad memory. All of those out there who believe in psychokinesis, raise my hand. How do you tell when you're out of invisibility? Depression is merely anger without enthusiasm. If Barbie is so popular, why do we have to buy her friends? My mechanic told me I couldn't repair your brakes, so I made your horn louder. Experience is something you don't get until just after you need it. Everyone has a photographic memory. Some just don't have any film. With a 6-year-old boy and a 4-year-old boy were raking the yard. The 6-year-old looks at his brother and he says, you know what? I think it's about time we started learning how to cuss. The 4-year-old nods his head in approval. The 6-year-old continues, when we go in for breakfast, I'm going to say something with hell, and you say something with ass. The 4-year-old boy agrees with enthusiasm. They quit raking and go into the kitchen. Their mother walks into the kitchen and asks the 6-year-old, what do you want for breakfast? The 6-year-old replies, oh, hell, Mom, I guess I'll have some Cheerios. Smack, she hit him hard. The 6-year-old flies out of the chair, tumbles across the floor onto the kitchen floor. He gets up, runs upstairs crying with his mother in hot pursuit. She was slapping his rear with every step. His mom walks into his room and shouts, "You can stay there till I let you out." She then comes back downstairs, looks at the 4-year-old, and asks in stern voice, "And what do you want for breakfast, young man?" "I don't know," the 4-year-old says, "but you can bet your ass it won't be Cheerios." My wife yelled at me from the bedroom asking, "Do you ever feel a shooting pain across your body like someone's got a voodoo doll of you and they're stabbing it?" I replied, "No." She yelled back, "What about now?" One day, an old man and an old lady were sitting in their porch when the old lady says, "Hey, Paul, why don't you run down to the restaurant and get us some ice cream?" Paul said, "Okay, I'll do it right now." Mom told him, "You better write it down because you always forget." He said, "No, he'll be fine." So off he went to the restaurant. When he got back, he handed her a hamburger and she said, "Dang it, Paul, I knew you'd forget. I told you I wanted mustard on mine." I would have started it a whole lot better. There was a brilliant young man who was applying for a job at the railroad. The interviewer asked him, "Do you know how to use the equipment?" "Yes," the boy replied. "And what would you do if you realized 2 trains, one from this station and one from the next, were going to crash because they were on the same track?" The young applicant thought and replied, "I pressed the button to change the points without hesitation. What if the button was frozen and it wouldn't work? I'd run outside and pull the lever and change the points manually. And if the lever was broken, I'd get on the phone to the next station and tell them to change the points. And if the phone was broken and needed an electrician to fix it." The boy thought about that when he said, "Run into town and get my uncle." He says, "Is your uncle an electrician?" "No, but he's never seen a crack train crash." Crash either. That's pretty bad. All right, I'll leave you with a couple of quotes. "The only person you are destined to become is the person you decide to be. And to be yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you something else is the greatest accomplishment you ever have." Today's fines: if you have a favorite bartender, that's $1. If you see him later or her later, give them $2. If you've eaten an apple in the last month, that's $1. If you've ever read a book by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle about Sherlock Holmes, that's $1. If you've ever played bingo, that's $1. If you're not wearing a Rotary pin, that's $1. And one quick thing, little note for me, if you're interested, next Thursday from 5 to 7 at the Hilton Garden Inn, there'll be a swearing in of the new mayor and council for the city of Beavercreek. So you're all welcome. And before I give it to David, the chief would like to say a few words to all of you.
Thank you, Don. Well, as we all know, just a little over a week ago, we had a tragic event at the Walmart. And I couldn't be more proud of the men and women of the Beavercreek Police Department, the Beavercreek Township Fire Department, and our community of first responders. The news doesn't typically report on these types of things and this type of information. I'm here very quickly, but we had 5 dispatchers come from the 2 other dispatch centers in Greene County to come help us that night at Beavercreek Dispatch Center. We had 11 agencies show up to assist at the scene. Clark County sent 4 deputies and a supervisor to handle calls for service in Greene County and Beavercreek, knowing we were all tied up. We had 3 medic fire departments show up, including the wonderful efforts from our Beavercreek Township Fire Department. Most of you may not know, but we train annually for that type of an event. We specifically train for those types of events, and we have been since 1999, 2000, somewhere around there. Things went as they were expected to go. Our thoughts and prayers go out to those families and the witnesses, the extended families, and anyone who had to be up there that evening and had to witness any of that. The actions of my 2 officers, your 2 officers that went in there immediately, more than likely stopped that person from reloading. And I can't say enough about them, and I just want to give thanks to our community. I say this a lot in my 32 years. I'm proud to be working here, proud to be the chief now, but over the past 32 years, it continues to show the support from our community and how much respect we have throughout the law enforcement community and the community in general. And I just can't say enough, but just a simple thank you. I want to give you a brief update on that. I made contact with all the victims on Monday. 2 of the 4 are out of the hospital, one's in a rehabilitation center. But, you know, it's still tragic. There's a lot to do. We can figure out the how this happened, but I'm not sure we're ever going to know the exact why it happened. However, if things develop and as things, evidence comes forward, I'm sure there'll be press releases and all that stuff coming forward. But I just want to say thank you to this group and thank you for supporting our agency because it doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you very much.
They did a great job.
Thank you, Chief. And last several chiefs of police of Beavercreek have been members of our club and have come from the ranks of the street officers. And, you know, we have a lot to be proud of in that regard. All right. So we have Happy Bucks. Yes, sir, Jack Henderson. You could stay seated. Here.
Well, I was standing so that I can.
Just keep the joints lubricated there, right?
I put a happy 5 in to follow the comments that you just heard. And I think it's important to realize that when all the havoc broke out in Walmart, within 3 minutes, we had police walking through the doors and were ours. And that kind of response does not happen without planning and training and dedication and sacrifice. And I've got $5 for the police department.
Other Happy Bucks. Yeah.
I've got a happy buck because I got my Christmas lights out before the weather turned bad.
Ms. Marcus.
My happy buck is because I actually had Thanksgiving dinner. And so I made my turkey and I put it in the preheated oven and came back an hour and a half later to start making the sides. The turkey was 84 degrees because someone, me or my wife, had turned the oven off.
Yeah, to throw in there, she had a possible hand in that, right?
It was only 2 of us.
Spreading the blame. All right, what else we got? What's in this one?
I have a couple happy bucks today, and it's our daughter's birthday, her 12, our last year before she becomes a teenager. And then my second happy buck since the last time that we met, the Greene County Public Library celebrated our 10-year anniversary of the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. And Jonathan Grant, who's on our information board, he was there, but we held the celebration out at Cedarville University, and Mark Weinstein, who's not here, helped us celebrate. It was a great event. We had Ohio's First Lady, Brenda Wine, surrounded by children reading books. We had bounce houses, we had balloon animals, and it was just a great celebration of over 600,000 books that have gone out to over 16,000 kids.
Awesome. All right. Yes, sir, JD.
I got a happy buck announcement, cautionary, the Beavercreek High School music program is gonna be out in full force this weekend, selling fruit. So be cautious if you're driving through the neighborhoods. If they don't hit your neighborhood and you want fruit, hop on by the school, you can buy it from the band room. I don't know what the cost is, I think it's $10 a bag for grapefruit or oranges. And then also on Sunday, the wrestling team is selling mattresses. So if you need a new mattress, swing on by and don't hesitate to mention my son's name, Justin, so that he can benefit there. I'm feeling $10 for that one.
All right. What else we got? Brandon.
Got a couple here. The first one's a lesson learned. When I was last here in person, the airport was 8-0. I didn't come for 4 weeks in person. We finished season 8-4. Go to the Rotary. Well, team will lose. I was very sad about it. Very, very sad. But we had a great road trip. We went south to see my grandparents. I was going to say great grandmother. My grandmother has never met my son. But sadly, she broke her hip a week before we got there, so she was in the hospital the entire time. But we got to see her 4 times in the hospital, which was really awesome. I was really glad my son got to meet an amazing woman. But we saw 9 national parks on the way there and back. We did Lincoln's Birthplace, Mammoth Cave, Shiloh National Battlefield, Tupelo National Battlefield, Bryce's Crossroads National Battlefield, Gulf Islands National Seashore, Andersonville, the Prisoner of War National Park, and Jimmy Carter's, which we went to his boyhood home, and then we were just kind of driving the planes and go see the visitor center, and there was like police blocking the road, and so we went to the next road, and it was blocked, and then the third road, and I finally asked what was happening, the whole city was shut down. That was on Saturday, so we have to go back someday to the visitor center. A lot of good national parks, and then I did a turkey trot with Hunter, and it's the second year in a row Hunter has won a turkey trot because he's in the stroller in front of me. And the best part about that was there was a big bridge in the second mile, and I caught the leading kid, who was 18, pushing the stroller up the bridge. And we were racing down the hill, and his parents were cheering for him coming off the bridge, and then I dropped the hammer on him. And we had a 5:30 final mile pushing the stroller, and he was telling his dad afterwards, I got a benefit from the stroller. His dad really quickly shut that down. Very gratifying to be a young kid in the stroller. So it was just a really good trip. And then the last thing was, Ashley and I went to the state park, St. George Island, Barrier Island in Florida. And for the first time ever, I saw a great horned owl in the wild. And it was just amazing, beautiful, sitting right up there, and just, the typical owl just like kind of following you as you move. And if you've never seen the great horned owl in the wild, it is something. So I hope you all get that chance someday. So yeah, that's like, I don't know, $5-10 or something.
Just gonna give a happy buck for Brandon seeing his first great horned owl in a while. I'm particularly jealous that I have one living in my yard.
Very jealous.
All right. Other happy bucks. Yes, sir.
Try to make mine a little less winded.
We're running out of time.
Brandon Burke, Joe Jenkins, wherever he's off at, weekend ago, we went out, kind of pushed a lot of the stuff in the storage unit, built some shelving, kind of started the organization process. I think that's huge. Dave donated some material, I donated some material, and like I said, we probably got one more session over there, and should be like an organized thing.
We appreciate that. That's a huge benefit.
Also wanted to give a happy buck. I kind of roped Abby and Isaac into the popcorn festival. So they're gonna start doing, helping with the booths. So, passing the torch, so to speak.
All right. Sounds good. Other happy bucks. Okay, ticket drawing. Remember that half the proceeds of the ticket drawing go to our Christmas basket project. The right to draw for a possible Pinot Parts, it belongs to ticket number 956708. Jonathan Hebron. Because you're not doing enough for this. Looking for the Queen of Hearts and or Joker.
Okay. Money. Good Joker.
Down, it's a slim portion of the. Five grows, all right. Okay. What announcements do we have? Let's announce, we have Christmas basket announcement.
So the sign up sheet for the Christmas basket, I think it's gone around. We will be wrapping gifts on December 12th at the fire station at 10:15. And then we will be delivering the Christmas baskets on Saturday, 16th, starting at Docs Market in Belleville.
Okay. Any other announcements? Right. Jonathan. come on.
You're welcome. All right, I don't usually do this, but I'm going to introduce our speaker today. If you want to learn more about the city of Beavercreek, today's presentation is tailor-made for you. Our speaker today is Brett Williford, serves as the Beavercreek Historical Society at the Beavercreek Historical Society as the History Center Director. The Historical Society's purpose is to preserve structures in Beavercreek that have historical significance, to develop an oral history of Beavercreek, and to develop a learning center for historical education. Please welcome to our club, Brett Williford.
Good morning. Good morning. I like to start off by saying I'm not a Beaver Creek expert, so there will be no Stump the Expert session because it's easier than you think. Just going along with what Chief was talking about earlier, none of those things happen without exemplary leadership as well. So just a big thank you to Chief Ureta, to Mayor Stone, Mayor-elect Adams, and certainly City Manager Landrum as well. So thank you to everybody. So 2008, I'm a real estate agent by trade, and there was a little bit of a dip in the market. Had a lot of free time on my hands. So my son at the time, we were driving down Dayton Xenia Road, and there's that very pronounced dip in the road that everybody who's ever been in a parade in Beavercreek is very well aware of. And he asked me, he's like, well, what's the name of this creek? I don't know, it's just a dip in the road. So we did a little research. We came to find out that it was called Bullskin Run. There is a Bullskin Run street name as well. When you do a little further research, and you learn that there was a slaughterhouse located in that very area. So we had kind of worked on a bit of a program, my son and I together, when he was young, and we decided that we were going to build a website. Let's see if I can write this part out right here. And so we started a website. It was originally called beavercreeksfinest.com. And then I ended up fielding a bunch of complaint calls for the Beavercreek Police Department. So I ended up changing the name to beavercreekliving.com. The site is still out there. It's not fantastic anymore. It's 15 years old at this point. Hard to believe, but it really kind of embarked me on a path of learning more about the community that I live in and love. I'm not a Beavercreek native, but just through my line of work and through spending so much time in the community, it really brought up this thought about what are all these historical aspects that aren't far from here. Beavercreek has tremendous history. The Alpha Grain elevator was originally built by John Harbine. We'll be talking more about him in just a little bit. A little bit of a delay. There we go. But different milestones in our community. We tend to measure things by either tremendous successes, tragedies, just events that evoke memories. And we're going to talk about some of those today. The Lupino Plaza, it's a boy sign. If anybody noticed recently, the Riffles Market sign just came down on Indian Ripple Road and has been replaced. I've tried to get one of those panels from Mrs. Reed, and without much success yet. So if anybody's got it in for me, let me know. The school systems. It's a young lady in the picture on the left here. Her name is Etta Cable. There's a street named Etta Cable. There's a neighborhood called Cable's Mill. So again, it was the people, it's the stories, it's all of these things that kind of come together and make us into the community that we are. So, Beavercreek was originally not a city, as I'm sure most people know. It was a collection of small towns. Alpha, Zimmerman. Prior to Zimmerman, it was known as Simmerman with a C. German Baptist Church was very prevalent, and it kind of grew from there. The town of New Germany in the northwest section of the township. The town of Trabine, which also had other names. It was known as Frost Station, F-R-O-S-T at one point. Pardon my list. Prior to that, it was known as Pinckney Station. The Pinckney Road was basically a Native American trail that went from Cincinnati ultimately up into the Piqua area. And that's where the original Clancy's Tavern was located, before the replica over in our neighbor. But all these little places that came together, Frost Station, Sunnyside was a little community right where Grange Hall Road intersects Indian Ripple Road. Or no, I'm sorry, that was New Concord. Sunnyside was right over near the intersection of Kemp and North Fairfield. And then you had Shoup Station. Some people call it Shoup. The Shoups call it Shoup. And that was really at North Fairfield, kind of near the 9/11 memorial. So this is John Harbine, a bit of an industrialist. He came from Maryland by ox-driven wagon in 1849. settled in the Alpha area. And like I said, he was a bit of an industrialist. He took whatever cash he had, he nailed it to the underside of the axle on his wagon in case they got waylaid on the road. You know, that thing we all do when somebody asks us for money, he could legitimately do it. So he came to town 50 years prior. A couple of gentlemen, Owen Davis, Benjamin Whiteman, had started a small hand cranked mill in the Alpha area. Mr. Harbine came in and really industrialized the entire community. You wonder why we have a factory road. There were 7 mills along, you know, the big Beaver Creek there. That there was a grist mill, there was a woolen mill, there was a sawmill. There was even, well, there were a number of distilleries in Beavercreek Township. Yay. And you know, Mr. Harbine was no stranger to those as well. He did not drink, but he was happy to provide drink for others. And there was also an oil mill, and the oil mill, kind of funny, was located down still on Factory Road, but closer to the Narrows. And the reason was, it smelled horrible. They were pressing linseed oil, and just the process of cooking the linseed before that they could press it. It was used in the making of paint, in lantern oil. They would press the residue into cakes that people would burn for light and for heat. But it smelled really bad, so it got tucked, you know, on the south side of town there. Picture on the bottom is actually in Alpha, looking south from right about where the mill stands. You can see the Stewart House is still right here on the right. I call it the Stewart House. And then you can see the split rail fencing as it heads over to where US 35 is now. Here's a picture of the oil mill. All of the mills were undershot water wheels, meaning the water flowed underneath and spun the wheel from below, rather than what you see like out in Clifton, at the Clifton mill, where that's an overshot where the water is channeled over and makes it spin from the top. Beaver Creek's always been known for fantastic schools. With Superintendent Otten here, we're not going to argue that. It's certainly still been very, very good to my kids. The school on the right here, we call the 1888 schoolhouse. Prior to that, there were 13 one-room schoolhouses in Beaver Creek Township. Several of them have been converted to residences, are still around. 2 of them on Grange Hall Road, Brown School number 1, Brown School number 2. Everybody probably knows the house at the corner of Indian Ripple and Alpha Bellbrook Road. This was their crown jewel at the time. Prior to that, there was a school known as Old Beaver, and it sat at the back of where Beaver Cemetery is right now, close to where the Coy House is. And Old Beaver was really well renowned. It was considered the 2nd high school in the state of Ohio. And when students would graduate from Old Beaver, they actually could go into Miami University as sophomores. So it was really an impressive curriculum. It was strict. I've seen some of the tests, some of the prep that was done at Old Beaver, and all of us in the room would be challenged, you know, to pass the sophomore exam there. But if a student was doing very well, they could earn benefits. One of the benefits, you know, the benches that they sat on were rough-hewn logs, and they had holes drilled in them. And if you were a good student, you could earn a peg to put in the hole so you had something to lean back on. So something to consider. Get the backs off the chairs. So there is a stone marker at the back of Beaver Cemetery. That's Mark Stewart, Bill Overholser, Frank Zink, Clyde Overholser, and Ernie Hubble in the picture. Growth, you know, as Beaver Creek kind of grew, a lot of it was very centric around Alpha, you know, in the early years. Again, you can see one of the mills here. The lower left is Leonard Barth's slaughterhouse. That was in Alpha. Mr. Harbine put up the money for him to build it. So he really had his finger into a little bit of everything. And then on the lower right is actually the Alpha Telegraph House. And that's set just east of Alpha between the train tracks. We have just recently acquired at the Historical Society the original telegraph block. And we hope to put it on display. We want kids to be able to put their hands on it, you know, to where they can say, you know, this was texting So even street names, as you drive through town, everybody learns them. Where did they come from? Factory Road, we've talked a lot about. This happens to be Factory Road, 1906. A little bit of a challenge there in navigating that. That's looking north from the railroad tracks. So the way to get started is to quit talking and begin doing, says Mr. Walt Disney. This is a picture of the Indian Ripple Road covered bridge. There were 4 in Beavercreek Township. This one, there's one known as the Alpha Bridge. There was one known as the Shakertown Bridge. And there was a 4th one. I did this 15 years ago. What was the name of the 4th one? It's out there. It'll come back to me. This was the last surviving of the bridges. The Alpha Bridge crossed right about where Yellow Brick Road crosses, the Beaver Creek at this point. That one was the second to the last, and actually a loaded coal truck in the 1920s pulled out and drove across that bridge. The weight of it made it give way in the middle. It went all the way down into the water. Truck driver dumped his load, took off. And, so the community ended up having to come out, and I've heard conflicting stories as to whether it was a heck of a bonfire or whether they salvaged the wood and put it into another project. Trabine Road was the other covered bridge. There was a War of 1812 general who had lived later on into his years, and was actually on that bridge. A small tornado came by, twisted it sideways, dropped it down in the river. He and his horses and a wagon were actually in the bridge at the time. Community came out and saved him. So family businesses, Beaver Creek's been well known for this for years and years. This is a picture of Cypher's Market. There was Smith's Market. There's been all kind of just really family driven businesses in Beaver Creek over the years. Local legends. Chief, he's okay. This is Sam Tobias. Sam was world renowned as a firearm manufacturer. He would hand rifle barrels of guns. He became very, very good friends with the likes of Henry Ford, with Thomas Edison, with a lot of different people. Henry Ford had actually given him the axle from a Model A and said, "Can you rifle this and make a gun out of it for me?" He actually passed away before he finished it. He died at 64 of an abscessed tooth. So get to your dentist. When it comes to local legends, this gentleman right here is talked about very, very frequently, Mr. Whitey Marshall. Whitey was born in Alpha, grew up. He and his brother Wendy, were really, really engaged in not only the community, but also the fire department, just sports, athletics, anything that they could kind of get their hands on. So this is Whitey. He ran a little sandwich shop, hamburger place called the Beaver Grill. It sat at the northeast corner of Factory Road in Dayton Xenia. High schoolers were allowed to leave school and go down to the grill and buy lunch if they liked and come back. Prior to the Beaver Grill, it was known as Hughes Place, H-U-G-H''S. This was his father. It actually started in the 1890s. It burned down one day. About a week later, he was trying to figure out what was going to happen, what was going on. Wagons started showing up from all over the township, full of lumber and tools, and the community rebuilt his restaurant for him. So to Chief's point, Beaver Creek's one heck of a community.
Is that where Alpha that is located, or?
Other corner, other side. Yeah, it was when Elena was built out, that building came down. So this is a picture of it from the outside. There was a mechanic shop in there. Both of the Marshalls were very into automobiles. There was a pool hall in the back. Lots of great stories. One of my favorites, lady came in one day to see Whitey, and she said, "I make confections, and I'm really looking for an investor for $500. I'll give you 10% of my business." He said, "Not really into sweets, but I'll let you consign them here. I'll pay you a wholesale price and then I'll resell them." She said, "I'll consider it." And she left. Esther Price never did come back and took her chocolates into the Beaver Grill. So the Marshall family fortune may have looked a little different. So this is the liar's table. this was a big red table right in the middle of the Beaver Grill. Anybody ever sit at it before? No. So this is where all the gentlemen in town, gentlemen in quotes, would come in and tell their tall tales. I've heard stories that the efforts, the work put into incorporating Beavercreek as a city happened around this very table. Interesting, it moved from the Beaver Grill when it had closed. It kind of disappeared for a long time. It showed back up at a restaurant where the AAA, the new AAA is over on Dayton Senior. It was called Deborah Lee's. It ended up in there for a period of time. That place changed to a place called Naomi's, and then it disappeared again for 20 years. Nobody knew where it was. I get a call one day, and I said, well, basically it was Phil Marshall. It was Whitey Marshall's son, and he said, you know, I'm moving to Tennessee. The Liar's Table needs to stay in Beavercreek. And he said, I'd like you to have it. So I took a room in my building. We have converted it to kind of a Beavercreek history room over at the Iron Gate building on Kemp. You're welcome to stop by and see it. But we do have the Liar's Table right there, and we do home closings at the Liar's Table, which is kind of ironic. So down in Alpha, this is at the corner of Dayton Xenia Road. The side street here that you can barely see is Beaver Valley. This was the Alpha Supper Club. Prior to that, it was known as the Midnight Sun Supper Club. Entertainment shows on the weekends, gambling in the back room, lots of different things to kind of promote the business. When I was talking to Phil Marshall about it, he was telling me a story about being on the back of his Uncle Wendy's motorcycle. And Wendy was trying to make that turn onto onto Beaver Valley Road, hit a little patch of gravel, laid the bike down, and they ended up sliding through the fence at the Alpha Supper Club, which happens to be represented right here in this picture. It's just funny how things come together. Next door, the Lone Pine Tavern. Anybody ever go to the Roadrunner Lounge? One admits it. So prior to the Roadrunner, it was known as the Lone Pine Tavern. It was a little rough back in its day. There is a Lone Pine. You can see the Alpha Supper Club next to it there. Lots of fights, lots of parties, lots of news. But early on in its history, Beavercreek had a traction line, trolley cars, essentially. They came from Dayton. They scattered through all the different suburbs and communities, and it came right down the middle of Dayton Xenia Road. If you talk to people in the engineering department at the city, they'll tell you when they chip down far enough, they'll find rails in the street, even today. So, well, what happens when you're running trolley cars? Well, you get, let's just say, entrepreneurs in the industry would travel from Dayton out to Beavercreek and other communities, and they would hang out at the Lone Pine Tavern. Chief, you're going to love this story because you don't have to deal with this one. So they would meet gentlemen in the, in quotes, in the Lone Pine Tavern, and there were actually cabins to rent by the hour. So this is all right in basically the parking lot area of where Old Scratch Pizza currently is. So this actually ended up even in Columbus as an issue. Edict came down from Columbus to the Greene County Sheriff, bulldozed the cabins, get rid of them, overdoses, fights. There were 6 deaths in 1 year in these cabins. So they were kind of done away with. Everybody has this wholesome, pure image. So that's Phil Marshall with a slide a little bit out of order. That's the Liar's Table, the original Beaver Grill sign. His only caveat to giving it to me, caveats, number 1, it has to stay in Beavercreek. Number 2, you have to have a cup of coffee with me. So we drug it out in his front yard, had a cup of coffee. One of my other favorite stories, in the late 1800s, gypsies were really quite prevalent in the Midwest. There was a gentleman named Owen Stanley. His wife was Matilda Stanley. They were known as the king and queen of the gypsies. They had come from England. And gypsies from all over would come to seek their counsel in Dayton. And they would come through Beavercreek down Dayton Xenia Road, and they would get to the area near the library now. And they would lie in wait in the woods, wait for people to come by on horseback or in wagons, jump out and rob them. But one little interesting thing that they would do there is when they took your money, they would also take your pants. The reason being, you would then have to hide in the woods until after dark before you could go home and try to explain to your spouse why you were pantless. But it basically gave them an opportunity to get away. So that whole area became known as Pants Down Woods. And was really kind of interesting. I was talking to a lady just 2 weeks ago, and she said, I always heard it called Britches Woods, which for me was just validation of the story. So Matilda's actually buried at Woodland Cemetery in Dayton. She lay in wait in an ice block room in Dayton for 9 months until they could find a pastor who was willing to do her service. When they finally found someone, it's estimated between 25 and 60,000 gypsies came to Woodland Cemetery to attend her services. So the People's Rail, we talked about, this is part of the trolley car system. This track looped south of Alpha. This is the Alpha baseball team taking their pictures there on the tracks. There were two different companies that ran. One was called the Traction, the other was called the People's Rail, and this was a People's Rail car. The building in the background sat at the southeast corner of Patterson Road and Grange Hall Road, where the mechanic shop is there now. And it also extended across the street where the Lammers Chemical Company, the barrel factory, used to be. This structure actually became part of the Lammers complex that I'll show you in just a little bit. Railway incidents, there were quite a few. The Alpha Panhandle, as it became known, there were 3 sets of tracks that came through, and they were different gauges, different widths. So if they weren't paying attention and a train came through and it jumped from one to the other, they could tip over. One time there was a tanker full of booze. It went into the creek, and people were picking up drunk fish just as fast as they could until law enforcement had to come out and say, you guys are going to deplete the fish. You need to stop. The accident on the right here was a train that actually was in Xenia. They didn't set a brake. It rolled backward. And when it got down to Treebine, it met a train coming forward. And this was the resulting collision. What we don't talk about enough is Ohio's unique and remarkable quality of life. This is a neat picture from around 1970. This dirt patch down here is where Marion's Pizza will ultimately be. There was the school at the corner. Miller's Market was there. Some of the neat old houses. This was Al Boone's house. Al Boone was a well driller, and he would travel to Florida a lot, collect fossil samples. He actually had them built into the stone in his house. So this house currently sits on Knollwood Drive. That's not where it originally sat. Originally, it was at the location where Murphy's Auto Care is. When the Great Depression hit, people weren't building houses. And the Boone family actually ran an illegal beer garden out of the basement of this property. Again, cheap. Athletics have always been huge in Beavercreek. Basketball's always been strong. Baseball's always been strong. Football's always been here. Come on. So this was a Marshall Brothers team. Their shops would sponsor everything that they could. Whitey Marshall's in the back row in the black top there. He was the coach. Berm Duncan is in here from Duncan Oil Company. A lot of the Cyphers boys are in here. The original Belfair Country Store, corner of Lance and North Fairfield Road, right where the gas leak just happened. It's yellow now, but this was owned by the Dice family, and this was actually where the origination of the Popcorn Festival started. In his parking lot, he would hold little events, and he would tell the youth that he would put popcorn kernels into the hamburgers, and that way they would flip themselves, and he didn't have to tend to the grill. So that was kind of a neat story then. Again, back to kind of the milestones. Most of you probably heard the story of when an aircraft took off from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Wing came off. Pilot successfully ejected. Plane successfully planted itself in the U shape of Beavercreek High School at the time, which would now be the auditorium. The plane literally smashed right into the parking lot. There were a couple of panes of broken glass, and that was the extent of the damage outside of it to a few cars. The only injuries that happened were just people's nerves, essentially at that point. The barrel factory fire, this is one that people always measure in time, 1969. Huge plume here. We just lost John Deal recently. He has a fantastic video on YouTube if you want to look for it. It was a Super 8 that was shot, and he narrates it as far as what happened at the Lamers Chemical Company. On the left is part of the cleanup. The gentleman in the mechanic shop actually gave me these pictures. And to the left there, you can see part of that car barn from the traction line. Oh, another picture of the plane at the school. Another tragedy that happened in Beavercreek. Station wagon full of Girl Scouts heading to a meeting. Anybody know anybody? Couple. Unfortunately was struck by a train. If you've seen the Angels Pass Park on Factory Road, it's dedicated to the young ladies whose lives were lost at this. Candy Pristolowski, former Beavercreek mayor, was in the car. She was one of the survivors. Here's a picture of the memorial for the young ladies who were lost. A couple of other stories. The one on the right here was another Air Force aircraft. It took off from the base. This one had malfunctioned, and the pilot ejected. The plane went straight into what used to be Concord School at the corner of Indian Ripple Road and Grange Hall. It had been converted to a residence. The Shoup family was living there. Lynn Shoup, one of the daughters, was killed immediately. Her mother was burned terribly. The Air Force actually airlifted her to San Antonio to their burn unit. She did ultimately succumb to her wounds. On the left is a man named Charles Justice, who knew nothing of justice. He was a low-level criminal. Nobody really knows where he was from. And he decided he was hungry for chicken. So he broke into a chicken coop on North Alpha Bell Brook Road, also owned by the Shoup family. The Shoup brothers were outside. John was armed, and his brother Bill said, "Why don't you go on in the one end, flush out the fox, and we'll take care of it when it comes out." Well, it wasn't a fox, it was a rat, and his name was Charles Justice. Charles shot John Shoup in the chest. Doc Anderson, any relation? No? Okay. Doc Anderson from Alpha came up. They put him out on the picnic table, were unable to save him. Mr. Justice escaped. It was a large manhunt across the entire community looking for him. Ultimately, they tracked him down. He was arrested, tried, and convicted to death. When he was taken to the execution chamber, he had actually fashioned a shiv out of his bed frame and actually tried to kill the executioner that morning. He's part of urban legend in Ohio. There's always been a legend that a prisoner who worked in the wood shop built old Sparky, the electric chair, and was ultimately put to death in it. He never worked in the wood shop, but he did work in the tin shop. So he likely fashioned the cuffs, the helmet, and the buckles that strapped him into the chair just prior to his execution. It's funny, we were talking just a few minutes ago, about the press. I don't care where you stand politically, everybody complains about one side or the other. And it's funny when you dive back into, old stories, it's not really all that much difference back then. We think of a more romantic age. The press was equally, horrible one way or the other. But just some funny stories. The one in the center is about prohibition. There was a very active prohibition party in Greene County and Beavercreek especially. They called themselves the Wets versus the Dries. There was a huge event in Columbus, and they came back on the train that day. Coincidentally, that night, the Harbine Distillery burned to the ground. Coincidentally. I don't know if that's still an open case or not. We'll talk about that later. Here's a neat ad from the Xenia Torchlight, and then ultimately became the Gazette. From the Midnight Sun Supper Club, Dayton Pike at Alpha, Allo Big Boy with Fifi D'Orsay. It's naughty, saucy, swingy, and a little bit shocking. Phone Kenmore 4861 for reservations. There's a ribbon from the Prohibition Party. In the upper left-hand corner is Bill Overholser in 1905. He fashioned a little canoe, and he's putzing around in the river right there by Alpha. You can see the Alpha Bridge in the background. They would kick board panels out to where they could climb up on the bridge and then jump into swimming holes. Upper right is Henry Coy, and he is in Alpha. That's the what we call the bed and breakfast house in Alpha. And he's wearing the Alpha baseball team jersey. It was called the Alpha 9. The house on the lower left is on Ankeny Road. It's known as the Filer Cabin. There are 2 patents attributed to that address. Number 1 is the offset mailbag strap. Number 2 is a yellow dye number 5 that is the color of butter. They would dye butter so that you could differentiate it from lard, because otherwise the butter would be white as well. And that patent is also attributed to that property. Picture on the bottom right here is Shakertown Road, looking toward Beaver Valley Shopping Center from Grange Hall Road, and you can see all the different tracks that are in the road there where the traction cars would come through. You know, it's interesting, again, back to the street name thing, Feedwire Road. That's where the electric wire ran for the trolley cars. So, you know, in summary, you know, Beavercreek is really chock full of history. We've only tapped on just a little bit here to kind of match your time frame for today. We're working on a new presentation for the gentleman in the upper left. His name was Daniel Overholser. He was a resident of Alpha, and his family actually gave me 4 of his daily journals that from the 1860s through the 1880s. Every day he journaled, every single day, and told what he was doing. He split a lot of rails. He shucked a lot of tobacco. But then you start thinking about it as you go through these, and you start looking for particular dates. You know, April 14th, 1864. You know, the assassination of President Lincoln. And you can put your hand on the page that somebody wrote it that day. He told a funny story about everybody in Alpha ran for cover. They were hiding in their root cellars because Johnny Reb was coming over the hill in Xenia. Well, the Armory was celebrating Independence Day, and they were firing off cannons and guns in the air. And everybody in Alpha thought that the Confederacy was pushing into Ohio. So like I said, I'm with the Beavercreek Historical Society. If you'd like to consider membership there, please do. We have a fun event coming up on December the 15th. It's a Friday night from 5 to 8 in conjunction with Beavercreek City Parks, called the Winter Welcome. All the cabins will be open. Docents will be there. There's going to be a lot of activities for kids and whatnot. So no charge at all for it. Feel free to come out and tour everything and enjoy the best that Beavercreek history has to offer. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Brad. And as become our custom, we'll donate a book to the Beavercreek Community Library in honor of Brett's presentation to us today. December 8th, our next meeting, Alex Harris and Mike Kennedy are our greeters. Keep an eye on all our outlets for upcoming events for the Beavercreek Rotary. Is there anything else for the good of the club? Okay, if everyone would rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.